Welcome and thank you for standing by. We'd like to inform all participants your lines will be listen only until the Q&A session. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. And now I'll turn today's meeting over to Bonnie Lipton. Thank you. You may begin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Campus Sustainability Training Series. It's great to see you all and to hear your stories about what you enjoy about working on a campus. If you didn't see my response, it was all the free food. Very important. So today's session is on building momentum and fostering leadership. And sorry, it's hard to advance the slides, and the mouse just froze. So this is a great way to start. Okay, and just a disclaimer, a Suicide Prevention Resource Center at EDC is supported by the U.S. Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the Center for Mental Health Services. And the views, opinions, and content expressed in this product do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of CMHS, SAMHSA, or HHS. So today, Irene and I will be speaking as usual, and we have two special alumni campus grantees. Dolores Chimini from the University of Albany is a Garrett Lee Smith Cohort 3 grantee, and Jessica Gifford from Amherst College, a Cohort 6 grantee, and they'll be sharing their sustainability experiences during today's webinar. Now I'll turn it over to Irene, and we'll go over the technical part of this webinar.
Thanks, Bonnie. Once again, welcome everyone. Since it's been a while since our last session in February, so we wanted to go over some tech features to help you be fully engaged. Tech issues can happen at any time, so if you experience any technical difficulties, please type your questions at any time into the Q&A pod on the right-hand side of your screen, and Laura from the tech team will assist you. You can make the presentation screen larger by clicking on the full screen icon located in the upper right-hand side of the slide presentation. If you hit the escape button, it'll return to normal view. I know I said this before, but please do not put us on hold as the hold music will play for everyone. To share your thoughts, comments, feedback, or questions regarding the content, click on the chat icon on the top right corner of your screen. Chat pod will appear as shown on the slide here. Before you send the chat to the group, please select all participants from the drop-down menu so we can all see your chat. You can maximize the chat pod by clicking on the icon that looks like an upside-down triangle, as you can see on the slide next to the Q&A and the participant pods. If you have any technical issue, please chat into the Q&A pod and Laura will assist you. Now that we've gone through the tech orientation, let's practice using our chat. Please chat in your caption for this picture. Once again, the chat pod is located right above the Q&A pod on the right-hand side of your screen. Don't forget to select all participants before you send your chat, and so we can all see your funny and witty captions. And if you're having trouble locating the chat icon, please chat into the Q&A section, and Laura will be able to assist you. Bonnie just chatted in, "I am hilarious." That's a good caption. Feel free to chat in your caption. I know it's post-lunchtime, so Lisa, thank you. Stop, you're cracking me up. Wow, that's a really good one. Very appropriate. Anyone else? Courtney, then they said, LOL, yes, indeed, laugh out loud. It is very funny. We have extra money. Nice one. Mark chatted, did you hear the one about the two lions who were lying in the grass? That's a cute one. Yeah, so feel free to chat in your caption as we move along. It seems like a lot of people are able to use the chat, and feel free to use this chat as we move along. And now I will pass it over to Bonnie to go over some overview.
Thank you, Irene. So as a reminder, this is a 4-part webinar series. In January, we discussed about adopting a sustainability mindset, and in February, we discussed cultivating partnerships. Today, we're going to be talking about building momentum and fostering leadership. And our last session in May, we'll be talking about securing resources or funding. And we know this is an especially important topic for you all, and we'll also be addressing this issue in today's session. I want to also give a plug for the Leaving a Legacy report. You see the link in the bottom of the screen. It's a very helpful document for planning out your sustainability needs. So just a reminder of what we want from you, the expectations. I'm going to go over that quickly. So this is an interactive webinar. You'll all be asked to share your thoughts and comments. I'm known to be a jerk who may call on people if the room is silent, so be ready to talk or chat in. But, you know, we do this because we know the grantees love to learn from each other and find that to be so helpful. So please do share your wisdom with one another. Please mute your phone line when you're not speaking. You can mute and unmute by pressing *6. And please don't put us on hold because we will hear your hold music. And yes, we do have homework for each session. Irene and I are very mindful of people's time, and we put a lot of thought into giving homework that's actually useful and won't take up too much time. So please try to complete your homework if you can. And then, of course, the next one is to be respectful of each other. We've had no problem with this in either of our January and February sessions, and I'm sure it won't be an issue during today's session either. And last but not least, we've invited alumni grantees to share their wisdom with this group, and Irene and I have also prepared some content for you. So feel free to ask lots of questions. The chat pod is a great place to type in your thoughts, comments, and questions throughout the webinar as people are speaking. Now, before our next session, I wanted to give you a preview for our last webinar session in May. Irene and I would love to hear any success stories from you about how you've used the information that you learned in these webinars on your campus for some sustainability success stories. This could be about how you've built a relationship with a partner who's difficult to work with, or you secured some resources, or you found data to help you build a case for sustainability with your administration, anything like that. So please email Irene or myself any success stories by May 12th, that's a Friday, and we'll share them in the last session. And if you'd prefer to share anonymously, we would be happy to do that as well. So now let's go over the agenda for today. First, we're going to be talking about what have you been up to. Then we'll talk about today's topic, building momentum. Then we'll hear speaker Dolores Chimini from University at Albany. It says University of Albany on there. It's University at Albany. Sorry, Dolores. Then we'll be talking about fostering leadership, and our guest speaker will be Jessica Gifford from Amherst. And then we'll talk about next steps. So before we get started, let's talk about the homework. We asked you to listen to a sustainability podcast from Adams State University and review the Action Alliance framework for successful messaging. So we picked this podcast because we thought Greg Elliott gave a lot of great tips about building momentum and fostering leadership for sustainability on their campus. If you recall, it was a small state-funded university that did not have a lot of funding in a pretty rural area, so we had to do quite a bit for sustainability. One of my favorite parts of the story was how his suicide prevention coordinator became a member of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Advisory Board, and how they made sure everyone in the community knew about it and what a big deal it was. So I'm wondering, has anyone done anything similar on their campuses, being part of a prestigious steering committee or board or something in the community that increases visibility for suicide prevention on your campus? Chat in if you're doing anything like that, or if you have any other thoughts about the podcast. So I'll give you a minute to chat in. You know what, actually, operator, can you unmute the line in case anybody wants to voice to speak. And then we also went over the Action Alliance framework for successful messaging.
Exactly. So it's borderline disruptive. He's a freshman, so he will be around. So granted, we might not have anything
Sorry, can someone, I think someone needs to mute their line. So we did unmute them. So just, be aware that we unmuted the lines. And sorry to kind of get you guys on the hop there. But so we also went over the Action Alliance framework for successful messaging because we thought it was important information to know for awareness campaigns and gatekeeper trainings, things to build momentum on campus. I'm sure many of you have already reviewed the framework. So were there any questions or thoughts about the framework or thoughts about the Sustainability podcast? Feel free to chat in or to speak. So Tracy Meyer said, I participate in the One Love Louisville Committee in the Bold Moves Health Advisory Board, Behavioral Health for Zero Suicide. Oh, so that's, so tell me more about these boards. Can you tell me about what your role is on them, Tracy?
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. My phone was being very strange. So the One Love Louisville is a collaboration. It was grant funded. It still is grant funded with Louisville Metro, and it was a violence and suicide prevention piece that I participated on. They have other goals as well, but that is the board that I participated on, and I partner with Jefferson County Public Schools, which is a very large school district here in Louisville. The mayor's office, the public health is separate from the state here in Jefferson County, so public health is on there. Several of our inpatient mental health providers networks participated with that as well. And so we had a summit in November that UofL worked with, Centerstone, which is the community mental health provider here in Jefferson County. And they brought in Kevin Hines to do the keynote speaking, and then we broke off into groups that wanted to work at instituting the zero suicide model here in Jefferson County. So I have been moved to that particular board as well.
Wow, that is really great. Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. It's a great way of being involved in the community. So I'm now going to turn it over to Irene. And operator, can you mute the phone lines?
Candy, are all of the
Yep, all lines are now muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for sharing, Tracy. So during today's session, we will be covering the topic of building momentum and fostering leadership. And Bonnie will be going over the topic of fostering leadership in a bit. Alumni grantees often mention that the GLS grant helped generate the momentum. If the momentum for suicide prevention did not exist already, the activities, data, and stories from the GLS grant can help your team inspire stakeholders to sustain efforts. From the interviews with alumni grantees from the Leaving the Legacy report, broad community support and leadership buy-in were critical for building momentum to help embed suicide prevention activities into other organizations or departments for the long term. Alumni grantees use various strategies to build momentum. One of them was to use data to build a case. As you can see from the quote on the slide, one of the alumni grantees said, "You have to fight with a lot of statistics and passion. My fighting didn't fall on deaf ears." This quote is very inspirational and reminds us the importance of both statistics to support your point and passion for suicide prevention. Passion and stories can help give a face to statistics, but we have to remember that stories or passion or statistics alone will make a difference. But passion and statistics together can help make a difference on your campus. Other strategies that former grantees have used to build momentum were to meet one-on-one with potential stakeholders and bring together diverse stakeholders to create a coalition that share a common goal of preventing suicide. By getting different stakeholders excited about suicide prevention efforts, you can ask them to fund or embed different parts of the program. You have already been using a lot of these strategies during your grant to build momentum on your campus. One key question that you can ask your grant team is, why is suicide prevention important on my campus? Answering this question can help you identify overlapping priorities to start or strengthen existing partnerships. I will give some examples of how other alumni and current grantees have built momentum. Snow College had a high-interest speaker and also involved the community to come to hear him speak, and this event sparked great discussion and collaboration with the community. Purdue University introduced suicide prevention topic during basketball games, and Albany, who is also a participant of this webinar, I don't believe they were able to join today. They asked the president to use video to introduce crisis protocols, and it was a great way to not only get leadership buy-in, but demonstrate to the school community that suicide prevention effort is a priority. These are only a few examples, and there are many other creative ways to build momentum on your campus. I'll be briefly going over state laws regarding suicide prevention on college campuses. I know we have a few campuses with the state law mandating suicide prevention on campuses who joined today, so please chat in your experience of how these state laws influence your suicide prevention efforts on campus during, as I just talk about the state laws. So basically, state laws mandating suicide prevention efforts on campus can be another great way to build momentum. Those states listed on the slide all have various policies and procedures that advise students and staff about suicide prevention programs. Details of the laws vary state by state, but the spirit of all of these laws is to mandate colleges to inform students, staff, and faculty with relevant suicide prevention resources. One thing to keep in mind is that often states will pass these legislations, but no fund to back it up, which can be tough for campuses for sure, because there's no money behind this mandate. However, you can use this law to convince leadership for more funding for suicide prevention. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, also known as AFSP, is an important partner for advocacy work. So I would definitely connect with your local chapter if you have any questions or want to learn more about how to pass state legislations to support your suicide prevention work. So here are some of the common challenges we see in building momentum. This is by no means a comprehensive list. The alumni speakers will address some of these challenges and how they overcame them soon. Just to briefly touch upon some of these challenges, the first challenge mentioned about lack of data. There can be many different ways you can go about this. First, try to see if there are any existing data that have been collected from other departments. For example, number of unique students using counseling, average number of counseling visits, knowledge about counseling services or mental health resources on campus, or data from gatekeeper trainings. If there isn't data specific to your campus, you can try to use national data such as the American Counseling Health Association, ACHA survey results, and look specifically at how mental health issues impact student studies. Also, don't forget about the SPDC information because there's a wealth of information that you reported there too. Another challenge we hear about quite often is community is focused on other topics such as binge drinking. Binge drinking and suicide prevention may seem like two separate issues, but you can definitely find overlapping priorities. From research, we know that students under the influence of alcohol or drugs are more at risk for a suicide attempt, or students may be drinking to self-medicate mental health problems. So working together to prevent binge drinking can also help prevent student suicide attempts and death. For our previous homework, we asked you to review the Virtual Learning Lab, which is a free online interactive tool developed by SPRC. There is a collaboration module, and you can find worksheets and examples that can be helpful. I would highly recommend taking a look at identifying overlapping priorities worksheet. This can definitely help guide your conversation with your partners to identify overlapping priorities to work together, and I can share the link with you soon. Let me turn it over to Bonnie at this time.
Hi, everyone. Well, this is Bonnie. Thank you very much, Irene. So I thought it would be fun to do a hypothetical case and put on our thinking caps. So while this case is hypothetical, we've spoken with grantees who've dealt with this exact issue. So at Awesome College, the GLS grantee is doing a lot of gatekeeper trainings for students, faculty, and staff. And they're all really excited and want to promote a culture of healthy mental health and suicide prevention on campus. As part of this, a bunch of staff and faculty members have signed up to become gatekeeper trainers and do some trainings. But after the grant ends, staff and faculty members are less interested in doing the trainings. They're too busy, or they don't have the time to attend the train-the-trainer sessions to get the qualifications, or they become interested in other topics and less interested in suicide prevention. The GLS grant team was really counting on these trainers to sustain gatekeeper training on campus, since there was going to be so many trainers who could train people all over campus, and that was going to help with sustainability. So the people at Awesome College are wondering how to address this. Can you chat in some suggestions on how to address this issue to get their suicide prevention gatekeeper trainings back on track? So hopefully some of you guys are chatting it in right now. So like I said, this is something we hear a lot about on campus. Oh, Lisa says, perhaps look at overlapping priorities and relate it in that framework. Oh, so that's a great idea, kind of just what Irene was saying about seeing how you can collaborate. So Courtney has potentially speak with department heads and deans to send reminders. Yes, absolutely, that's a great idea. Diana says that financially capable offer incentive or stipends for trainers or gift cards. Yes. Or it could, it doesn't have to be something big. It could just be like a nice lunch for people because everyone loves free food. Or it could be a note written to their supervisor, commending them for their hard work. Those are all great ideas. Oh, free parking. Well, that's like the best idea I ever heard. To have free parking. I know on a lot of campuses that would make like the world's biggest difference. That might be the best incentive I've ever heard of. So those are really great. Thanks very much. So I hope that was kind of helpful to talk that through and think it through. So now we're going to turn it over to our speaker, Dolores Chimini. Dolores is the Assistant Director for Prevention and Program Evaluation at the University at Albany, a GLS grantee, and they were a grantee from 2008 to 2011. So just to do the math there, Dolores has been sustaining their suicide prevention activities for the past 6 years, along with her team, of course. And during this presentation, we want to remind you to type in your questions for Dolores. Just write them in as she presents, and we'll give them to her at the end. So, Dolores, how are you? To begin, could you tell us a little bit about the University at Albany and what suicide prevention goals and activities you have?
Yes, and thank you so much, Bonnie, for inviting me to present today. I will tell you a little bit about the University at Albany. It is a large public university that has about 18,000 students, about 13,000 are undergraduates, and the rest are graduate students. It really is almost like a small city. It's one of the 64 campuses in the SUNY system, and because it's located in the capital of New York State and in the Northeast, it really is challenged by a number of risk factors and scrutiny for good or for bad, being near government and all. We are an NCAA Division I school. We are, as I mentioned, located in the Northeast, which actually increases our risk when we look at national data for suicide and also for related substance abuse risk. Next slide, please. Let me tell you now a little bit about our GLS grant and our project goals. We wanted to focus on two primary areas. First, to identify risk factors for suicide and related risks. And for that, we wanted to develop instruments and interventions to look at proximal risk factors for suicide. That is, the factors that might lead to suicide, like substance abuse, for example, and then address those early through prevention and intervention, and then ideally reduce the risk for suicide. The second goal of our project was to increase the utilization of counseling and psychological services. And we did that in two ways. First of all, through gatekeeper training. We created our own small group gatekeeper training program that we collected data on and published on in the Journal of American College Health in 2014. In addition, we trained our peer educators in a program called Step Up UAlbany, which encouraged students to identify risk factors for suicide and related risks and know what to do in situations where they noted warning signs, and then encourage help seeking and referral as a result. Next slide. Our suicide prevention program is a comprehensive program, and this is the same model that we use for violence prevention and substance abuse prevention, because our view and what the literature actually says is that if we reduce risk in one area, we're also reducing risk in other areas. So here you see some factors, and I'm sure many of your campuses have most or all of these in place, because it really takes a village to make a change in culture on campus in terms of reducing risk. Things like presidential leadership, a task force that focuses on risk behavior, student involvement, research, parental involvement, and these are just to name a few. And all of these are very, very important, and they involve the entire campus community, which begs the question, how do we sustain and more importantly, enhance the momentum for our suicide prevention efforts? Next slide. Here's another way of looking at our comprehensive suicide and other risk prevention program. This model depicts a public health approach. So here we're intervening on the left side of the triangle universally with the entire campus community. The middle part of the triangle are our interventions that help us intervene early with students at risk. And of course, the right side of the triangle are indicated interventions, and they're the typical treatment and referral that we're used to in campus counseling and health centers. So for universal prevention efforts, we do things like social norms campaign to encourage help seeking. For early intervention, we have a peer-facilitated and professionally supervised hotline service called Middle Earth Peer Assistance Program, and we also do depression screening and alcohol and substance abuse screenings and a variety of different screenings. And of course, we're continuing the treatment and referrals in our indicated interventions. And what we try and do at our counseling center, and this really helps us sustain our efforts, is to move beyond the traditional counseling services and move more toward early intervention and universal intervention. That reflects a true public health approach, and it engages the entire campus community, including our students who benefit so much from our interventions in our work. Next slide. So what are some of the strategies to enhance momentum as we look at sustaining our campus programs? And here you see a number of them: collaboration, networking and program promotion, building capacity, evaluating our programs, and receiving diversified funding, and actually sustainability itself. So In the next few slides, what I'd like to do is to show you some questions that we asked ourselves as we were building momentum for our programs and eventually sustaining our programs. So let's go to the next slide and look at collaboration. So as I mentioned, it really takes a village to change culture around preventing suicide and promoting resilience on college campuses. And I'm sure that most or all of you on the phone have allies, have collaborations, have task forces to address suicide and related risk on campus. But there's really an art in terms of finding collaborators and capitalizing on their strengths. What we want to do is capitalize on the human capital that we have available. It's not just about money, it's about dedicated people. So what we want to do is look at our collaborations and place people where they best fit in terms of strengths. Everyone has unique skills, everyone has talents, and how can we look at the talents of our collaborators and engage them in our work and help them feel appreciated. Also, we do need to have at the table folks that have differing opinions as we do because we need to hear what they have to say, and we need to understand that they may have very legitimate points, and we need to be able then to understand their points of view and work toward addressing those. So collaborations and coalitions are very important to foster. Next slide. Networking and program promotion. This is also very important. It's going beyond the immediate collaboration that I talked about. So we need to look beyond our campuses. Look at colleagues who are doing work that we'd want to do similarly on our campuses. Connecting with people, talking about challenges we have, sharing successes and lessons learned is very important. In addition, I'm sure that all of you have had many successes on your campuses as you've moved forward. And they could be things that you see as very small, but it's important to get the good word out to your campus and to your broader community about the work that you're doing to prevent suicide and to promote resilience on your campus. Because then people hear about it, they might want to emulate it, and your university then is seen as a place that is safe and that supports health and resilience among your students. Next slide. Building intervention capacity. This is very important and really needs to start at the very beginning as you develop your suicide prevention programs. I'm sure that all of you have prevention strategies in place like gatekeeper training and a bystander intervention program perhaps, things that you have developed that seem to be working well. And you want to be able to continue these after your grant funding has ended. So there are a number of things that you may want to consider in terms of building intervention capacity, and that is developing protocols and being clear about how those successful interventions are done so that they can be replicated in the future should you move on to a different job or should people on your staff move on for some reason. It's important to document those protocols through written means so that they can be passed on and a legacy can be left. In addition to that, it's very important to train multiple people in the same intervention so that the intervention is not just dependent on one person being available or one leader being there. So really thinking most broadly is what is working, what are the protocols that support the intervention being effective, is it documented, and do we have a number of people, do we have redundancy to be able to implement that protocol? Next slide. Evaluation strategies. So I don't know about how it is at your institutions, but I'm sure it's probably very similar. Our president likes to see data showing that our programs are effective, and that's how we get continued resources. And so what we do is whatever intervention we develop, we make sure that there's evidence about it in the research literature or that at least it's evidence-informed. if we need to move it forward one step and there's not quite something like it yet. And we collect data to show that our intervention is either working, and if it's not, then we move on and we try something different. It's really important to take our time to collect data and not to expect change immediately. When we're looking at public health-focused culture change, it may take years for our interventions to impact the culture. So not only is it important to collect our data, but to be persistent and not to give up if we're not seeing change immediately, because change can take place over time. On the slide in front of you, you see some questions you might ask yourself as you're thinking about evaluation. Is your evaluation tailored in the language that could be understood by different populations and different stakeholders? Is your data perhaps integrated in your strategic plan for the division you work in, for the unit you work in, and for your university as a whole? And try and tie your evaluation methods and the data that you report to the goals and objectives and mission and vision of your division and your university. Next slide. Okay, enhancing diversified funding. We are all lucky enough to have had GLS funding. It's really made a significant difference on our campus in moving forward our momentum. But there will be a time, as there was for us, when our grant funding has ended. And so what we needed to do is to look at our resources, not just in terms of funding, but in terms of people and what they contribute, and see how can we look at possible options to continue our program. Funding from different departments, or perhaps foundation funding, funding from our own department, reallocation of resources and the like, looking at student fees and perhaps using some of those to continue our interventions. And I know you're going to be having a session in about a month or so on this topic, but I wanted to just bring forward some general ideas as I just have, and really leave you with one point associated with this slide, and that is that do not rely on one source of funding to continue your programs. You want to have a diversified set. You want to have multiple ways of supporting your program so that if one source were to dry up or be limited, you can continue your program. Next slide. And then finally, sustainability. And as you see from the quote here in front of you, sustainability is really supported and moved forward. Momentum is moved forward by good leaders. And from what I'm hearing about the great work that you're all doing on your college campuses, you really are described in this quote. It's your leadership that helps programs move forward. And the next slide actually shows a depiction of our sustainability efforts. Many are pretty self-explanatory. We have a work group. We have a President's Advisory Council on risk behaviors. I'm just mentioning a few here, just in the interest of time. We do consultations. We do presentations. We network. We try and integrate the work that we do into our divisional and our university strategic goals. All of these things put together help support sustainability and help our campuses move forward and keep the momentum going after our funding is gone. And then the last slide that I have has my contact information. And after this webinar, I am very, very happy to communicate with any of you if should you have any questions or ideas that you want to pass by. After all, in terms of building momentum, networking and communication and consultation is very, very important. And with that, I'm going to stop, and I believe we're going to be inviting some questions at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dolores. That was a really fascinating presentation from someone who's been working in this for a while. So actually, I'm going to leave the contact information up there so people can write it down. Now if anyone would like to ask any questions, please chat them in. While we're waiting for people to chat them in, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Could you tell us, Dolores, what are some specific tactics you've used for getting the word out in your community? Have you done any targeting marketing outreach that's been particularly successful?
Yes. Again, our success in that area comes from our collaborations. We have networked with some excellent colleagues from our campus media and marketing office. We've gotten at times some small grants to create a prevention video and something where we could use the expertise of our media office. And so they felt very, very engaged in the project. They felt very much appreciated, and that has helped to get the word out. And also the fact that we received a GLS grant and there was some funding involved helped us get the word out about our efforts. And even today, I just learned that our student program, our peer program, Middle Earth, is going to be highlighted in a couple of weeks in a story on Good Morning America. Again, you know, sometimes when we network just a little bit with our colleagues, then we get things that are very unexpected. So today I'm going a little frantic here, trying to arrange, work with producers from Good Morning America, which is very, very exciting and something I never would have expected.
Wow, Dolores, that's amazing. When you guys are on Good Morning America, once it's aired, can you send me a link to the clip?
Sure.
I'm sure all the participants here would love to watch that.
Sure.
That's fantastic. Wow. So another question for you is, how have you maintained your data collection efforts? You talked about the importance of data, and I completely agree. It's such an important tool. But who's helping you analyze the data? Because I know it's often, it's not necessarily a skill set that I have. So how do you analyze it and maintain it?
Again, collaborations and partnerships are very, very important to us. Fortunately, in our counseling center, we value very much data and collection of data. So we have some licensed psychologists who are not only experts in the clinical and prevention work, but also expert in terms of evidence-based work and data collection and data analysis. But for programs and schools who may not have that luxury, it might be very, very productive to partner with faculty on your campus who may have an interest in the data that you want to collect and in the area that you're working with, suicide prevention or prevention of risk, because then it's a win-win situation. You're getting some assistance in terms of evaluation and data collection, and they're getting assistance, especially if they're assistant professors and need publications for tenure to be able to collect data to support their efforts to get tenure. I know that being a researcher on a college campus, it's often very difficult to be able to network with service delivery programs on campus, and you'd be surprised at how much some faculty might appreciate the ability to network with you and the wonderful programs you have.
Thanks, Dolores. That's really wonderful. I like that point about engaging the faculty to do data. We often hear about that it could be hard to engage faculty in suicide prevention efforts, so that's a great example of how you can do that and get them engaged and get your data looked at. So thanks so much. Dolores has to hop off the call now because Good Morning America is at her office, no big deal. But her contact information is there, and she would be more than happy to answer any questions. So thanks, Dolores.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for listening. Best wishes as your programs move forward.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Irene now.
Thanks, Bonnie. And I know it's after lunchtime for East Coast and Midwest folks, and it's kind of approaching lunchtime for the West Coast people. So before we jump into our second topic of fostering leadership, we just wanted to make sure we have a quick mental break. So please chat in what your favorite self-care activity is, and feel free to stand up and stretch as needed. But I'll just give a minute for people to chat in. And just to share my favorite self-care activity, I love taking walks, and fortunately, Bonnie and I are based in Waltham, which is outside of Boston, and we have beautiful pathways that we can use. And yeah, Kate said hot springs. I would definitely love hot springs. Katie said that batting cages. Wow, nice. Mindfulness, running, reading a book, visit waterfall, Cynthia. Wow, those are really good suggestions. Oh, by the way, if you guys are using the Q&A chat, I will encourage you to just click on the chat icon on the top right-hand side of your top right corner, and the chat section will open up. And feel free to chat in any comments or thoughts later. But these are really great strategies that I can definitely use for my self-care activities in the future, batting cages and hot springs, running, mindfulness. So thank you so much for chatting in. And now I will turn it over for Bonnie to go over the second part of the topic of the day.
Thanks, Irene. And we have one more from Marty that says hiking. That sounds like a lot of fun, especially hiking if you had a dog. That'd be really great. I like dogs. Okay, so now we're going to move over to fostering leadership on campus. And we combine this with building momentum because we thought, you know, these two things really kind of go together. So we're talking about fostering leaders or champions, and we briefly went over this during February's webinar on how a champion is someone on your campus or in your community who's well known and respected but can help champion the cause of suicide prevention. So what do we mean by being a leader or champion for suicide prevention? We're talking about someone who's consistently supportive and passionate about suicide prevention on your campus. This is someone who makes the case for suicide prevention to stakeholders in your community, whether that's students or faculty, parents, community members, outside providers. And, you know, we mentioned the Leaving a Legacy report earlier in the webinar, and this report was based on interviews with numerous campus, state, and tribal Garrett Lee Smith grantees. And in this report, they found that, quote, the presence of consistent and qualified leadership was one of the most important factors that sites felt influenced their ability to continue suicide prevention efforts after all GLS funding has ended. So that's a really important point about the leadership. But when we talk about leaders, we don't just mean people high up in the administration, such as the dean of students or the president. For example, one campus grantee I worked with was at a state school that was dealing with severe budget cuts as their registration rates had dropped. And this was all during the last year of their GLS grant. So it was really hard for them to find partners for sustainability as everyone was working overtime to keep their work going. But one of the members of the grant team was an evaluator in their Office of Institutional Research. And this person had been at the campus for many years and basically knew everyone. So this person was able to talk up the importance of suicide prevention to their many contacts he had on campus. So while their plans for sustainability was not as robust as they had hoped, they were still able to continue certain activities thanks to this champion. So when we talk about the characteristics of a champion or leader, here are some things that we've found through our work and through the report to be important. Certainly fundraising and grant writing, being able to do that. Coalition building, community organizing, communication, program management, which all of you guys currently do because you're juggling multiple suicide prevention activities. Creativity, being able to think outside the box. Cultural competence, really important since we're all working with different groups and, you know, there's special outreach groups we try to reach out to, such as, say, veterans or American Indians, Alaska Native. Strategic planning, very important and an important part of effective prevention. And then, of course, most importantly, a passion for suicide prevention. So when we talk about how your GLS team can become more of a leader for suicide prevention on campus, here are some different things. One is visibility for your staff and suicide prevention activities. So for example, and I mentioned this earlier, in the podcast from Adams State, Greg talked about how he made their suicide prevention coordinator, Laurel, visible across campus and plastered her face everywhere on campus, and how she joined the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's a great way to be visible. Then we also have partnerships, talking to people and getting the word out. And then also knowledge. Again, this Greg Elliott Adams State example, by Laurel being asked to pick the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Advisory Board, that made it seem like she was an expert in suicide prevention, as I'm sure she was. And so that's a great example of showcasing your suicide prevention knowledge. And our speaker, Jessica Gifford, will be talking about this in a bit, about how she did this at Amherst. So different people on your campus can be leaders and champions. So, we have health services, student government, campus police. Here are different examples. And I encourage you to chat in any other departments that you don't see on here that could be champions. And I just want to give a quick example while you're chatting in. For example, the alumni office at one of my Garrett Lee Smith grantees, they the GLS grantee had met with them, talked about suicide prevention, and then the alumni office had met with the GLS staff on their campus and seen all that they've been doing in suicide prevention. So when the alumni office met with an alum who wanted to give money to the school, they suggested the alum give money to suicide prevention and set up a meeting with them for the suicide prevention team. So that's a great way how different people on your campus can be champions, like someone you might not think of, like the alumni office. Does anyone want to chat in any other examples of different departments that could be champions on your campus? So Tracy Meyer chatted in the Alcohol EDU Committee, Greek life. Exactly. Greek life is very important. This is a bit of a different subject, but when I worked at Tufts University, the Greek life was really involved with sexual violence and preventing sexual violence on campus, and I thought that was a really great partnership. Finally, let's talk about what to do once the grant ends, and thinking about, like, well, what are the clear roles and responsibilities, because you don't want people duplicating work, and thinking about what fits a future leader or champion's job description or passion, and how suicide prevention activities can help meet those goals. For example, an advisor who works with first-generation students would be interested in what she can do to keep first-generation students from dropping out. So that's a great way to partner. Also, we want to remind people about recognizing people for their work. If you recall Rita Tybor from Miami-Dade Community College, she spoke during our January webinar, and she talked about how she recognized people who helped out with their activities by writing a note to their supervisor commending them. So I thought that was a really great way to recognize people for the work that they do. So now we want to talk about challenges that you might have when you don't have a leader on campus. Operator, can you unmute the phone lines, please? And I'd love to have people either chat in or speak in how you handle the problem of not having a strong leader, or how you would handle that problem of not having a strong leader on your campus to spearhead suicide prevention efforts, or what do you do when there's turnover, which we know happens on every campus. So please speak or chat in any suggestions you have.
Thank you, and as a reminder, all lines are open.
Thanks, Candy. So any suggestions that people want to chat in? I know turnover is something that happens on many campuses, sadly, and it can be a struggle. Jessica Gifford from Amherst is going to be talking about this during her presentation in just a few minutes. Are there any suggestions or thoughts about this? Well, so now I'm just going to be a jerk and call on people. Like Courtney Pickens from Eastfield College, my favorite person to call on. Oh, but Courtney, you got saved. Katie Simmons said a student group. Kate, what can you, sorry, I called you Katie, it's Kate. Kate, what can you tell me, what do you mean by a student group?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Okay. We have a student group on campus called the Suicide Prevention Awareness Task Force, SPAT Squad, and so they, I don't know if that would help, but just having a group of students who are interested in it and making it sort of their project, and then they can kind of help out with the turnover aspect, but they would probably still need to have an advisor, and so I don't know if
yeah, that's a great example, and I love that you suggested students because, as we've talked about, they're a really important partner in suicide prevention efforts. So yes, while they might need an advisor, you're absolutely right that that's a great partner to have when dealing with this. Are there any other suggestions people have? Courtney, I saved you. I'm not going to call on you, but if you have something, you're welcome to say it.
I'll share.
Okay, Courtney.
I'm Courtney Pickens, and one thing that I thought about was just having, if there is, maybe a Title IX office or some kind of health service or something like that in that line, you can probably tap into those kinds of resources because they deal with those kinds of, they deal with some overarching issues, so it could also benefit them to promote these things within the campus community, and then be able to tie in sexual violence and tie into remaining healthy and different things like that. So I think those will be some great options as well.
That's great. I love that example. I especially love how you talked about tying it in with sexual violence and other important topics on campus that people might be collaborating with. That's a great way to all partner together. So thank you, Courtney. And again, sorry for always picking on you. So now, operator, can you remute the phone lines, please? We're now going to hear from our next speaker, Jessica Gifford from Amherst College. She's the Associate Director of Health Education and Mental Health Promotion, and Amherst was a Cohort 6 Garrett Lee Smith grantee that ended in 2015. And as always, during the presentation, we encourage you to type in your questions for Jessica as she presents. And Jessica, you can get started while I give you control of the mouse. Hold on, sorry.
Great.
It always takes us forever, guys.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for the invitation. I feel very fortunate that Amherst College was a GLS recipient, and it's enabled us to do some really great programs. So we're moving. Oh, I don't have control yet, but we're moving a couple of hours. I have control. Let's see. Yes. So we're moving a couple hours west of Albany to rural western Massachusetts. Amherst College is a small residential college with about 1,800 students. It was founded in 1821, so we've been around for a long time. And it was originally an all-men's college, and we went co-ed in 1974. And then about 10 years ago, the demographics of the student body changed pretty significantly. The college made a commitment to diversifying the student body and also to becoming need blind and to providing financial support for all of our students who needed it, which means that most of our students do not graduate with huge student loans, which is amazing. So about 58% of our students receive financial aid, and almost half of our students are students of color. So building momentum is important to fostering leadership, to show that you have strategic momentum. And I like to be the hare. I like to jump in and just get started and get things done, but it was really important to slow down and to look at the goals of the grant and to really plot a strategic course and then stick to that course. And that's probably true for all colleges, but at the time that I first started at Amherst, we were in the middle of a Title IX crisis that was making national news, so we were receiving some negative attention, and it really started a couple of years of upheaval on campus and change in terms of staffing and also in terms of policies and practices on campus. And so it was extra important for me when I got here to really become familiar with the campus climate and figure out what would work on this campus, what would be most effective to achieving our grant goals. And probably the biggest challenge to staying on course is wanting to do everything. And I have lots of ideas. Students had lots of great ideas. Other people on campus, once they learned that I was a resource and we had this new grant, also wanted to collaborate, which is a great thing, but it was really important to remind myself that I can't do everything and to keep returning to that path that we had coursed out and to work with potential collaborators to get them to join us on the path rather than all of us kind of going off in different directions. So who are the leaders? This was a challenge for us because the leadership was changing significantly in the first couple of years of the grant. So it's important to identify who is going to be participating in making decisions around sustainability, who will be making funding choices. And in our case, we were really advocating for the college to pick up the mental health promotion position once the grant was over. And it was surprisingly challenging to figure out what the process was for getting new positions funded, but I did eventually find out that the department head, so in our case, the Dean of Students, because I'm in the Student Affairs Department, needs to first vet all proposals for new positions and decide what her priorities were. And so if you make that cut, then she writes a proposal advocating for the new position, and that proposal goes before a committee, and they narrow down all of the positions on campus to a smaller group, and then that goes to the senior leadership, and then finally it goes to the Board of Trustees for a final stamp of approval. So Amherst College is extremely fortunate to have a large endowment. However, that doesn't mean that positions are easy to fund. So new positions are still very challenging to get approved and need to go through a number of loops, and there's a number of cuts that are made along the way. So knowing who's involved and engaging them is really important. Ideally, getting face time with the leaders, with key stakeholders. I did not have a lot of direct face time with the Dean of Students. I don't report to her directly, and we're in a different building on campus. So my primary face time with her was in a monthly departmental meeting with 30 or 40 other people. So one of the things that I did was to offer to present some of our work at one of those meetings. And I think that was helpful to give her a broader understanding of the work that we were doing and the impact that it had, as well as to educate the department as a whole on the work we were doing. And finding allies, my two primary allies were my direct supervisor, who does report to the Dean of Students, and so she was advocating very strongly for the creation of the mental health promotion position. And I did a lot of talking with her and strategizing with her about what key information to present to the dean that might be influential in the decision around our successes and around the work that we were doing. And then the second primary ally became the director of the counseling center. And when I first came to Amherst campus, the College Counseling Center really operated from a private practice model, so they were not doing very much outreach or prevention work. They were really strictly seeing students individually, which is why when the grant was written, I was located over in the health education department rather than in the counseling center. And that position turned over midway through the grant, and I think the new director really saw the value of the work that we were doing in terms of raising awareness of mental health issues, decreasing stigma around conversations about mental health and around help seeking, raising awareness of support resources, including the counseling center, and also the prevention gatekeeper training work that we were doing and the wellness skill building work that we were doing. So she was a great advocate in talking with the Dean of Students to educate her on the value of having a mental health promotion position and taking a public health approach. So in addition to specific allies, rally the troops, so get the campus engaged in general. And on our campus, students and faculty in particular have voice and have a little bit more power than staff do. Faculty were probably the most challenging to engage, as Bonnie mentioned. I think that's probably common feedback. They didn't tend to come to a lot of our open programs and events, but they were more responsive to individual specific invitations. So we were successful in getting a couple of faculty to sit on our mental health and wellness committee, and we were also successful in having some faculty members speak at some of our programs. So reaching out individually to give them a very specific role has been more successful. And then students care a lot about mental health and a lot about stress, well-being, so they were really responsive from the very beginning and got very engaged. And I think in our sustainability efforts, it was helpful to just create campus conversation around mental health and create some buzz on campus. And students ended up writing some articles in the student paper, and I know that the administration kind of monitors what's in there to keep track of what issues are rising to the top and are important. And so I think just creating as much conversation and buzz on campus was really helpful. And then students also have more access to leadership than staff do on our campus. And so, for example, the president holds regular drop-in hours for students. And so I encouraged the students that I was working with around mental health. I have a small student staff called the Wellness Team. And so I encouraged them to use those drop-in hours and just share what we were doing. And they actually invited her to participate. So we had the president participating in a video project that we did around reducing stigma and encouraging students to seek support. And then we also had her speak at one of our events. So this was amazing, and I think that she may not have been as responsive if I had reached out to her directly, but the fact that students asked her, it was tough for her to say no. So that was a big help. Communicate the value of what you do, particularly because most of the grant initiatives will be new and the position may be new. Just sharing what it is that you're doing and why it's important. To talk about the impact of suicide prevention and mental health promotion work on academic performance, retention, medical leaves and withdrawals, student satisfaction. For us, the academic performance piece was really key. That's something that our campus cares a lot about. And when I first arrived, there seemed to be a perception among some faculty that really doing wellness work, skill building, self-care was actually taking time away from study. And so there was a sense that our work was in conflict with the goals of the faculty. And so really sharing that our goals were very aligned, and that if students are in a place where they're mentally healthy, they're actually going to improve their focus and attention and performance. Share impact stories and numbers, so sharing the numbers of people trained as well as quotes from some of the programs that we did. So this is a quote from the Student Support Network, which is our gatekeeper training. I gained the confidence to approach difficult situations and conversations rather than shying away from them. And from the Wellness Challenge, which is a 4-week program that we offer in February that encourages students to engage in self-care and wellness practices. I found that my stress levels have decreased significantly and that I'm able to focus much better on my work. This experience has taught me that self-care is extremely beneficial to being happier and more productive. So if you can get students to share their own stories, I think that's great to just personalize the experience. And we've also done that a little bit through videos. And then shared data, and Dolores and Bonnie both, and Irene all mentioned the importance of this. People love data because it shows very concretely the impact that your programs are having. And so with the Wellness Challenge I was mentioning, in our second year of doing it, we assigned a random control group, and we did a pre-assessment before the 4-week program began, a post-assessment, and then a 7-week follow-up. And we used an anxiety scale and a depression scale and then some additional questions. And so you can see here that it shows that anxiety significantly dropped after participating in the Wellness Challenge. And then this huge spike on the right here in the control group is their level of anxiety around this time of year at the end of the semester. So it's the last week of classes, they have tons of work, they're getting ready for finals, for summer, post-graduation. So this just shows the impact of that particular program. And again, it shows that the participants, the students who participated in the Wellness Challenge, were 5 times less likely to meet the criteria for depression at the 7-week follow-up. So this is something that leaders care a lot about, that a program is helping to prevent students from becoming depressed. And I think that is the end of my slides, so we're going to open it up for questions, and my contact information is on that initial slide. So I'm happy at any point to be a resource for grantees. You're welcome to get in touch if you have additional questions after this webinar, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really love that presentation. It was really great. We have one question from Kate Simmons. She wants to know, do you have a write-up of how the Wellness Challenge works?
I do. I've actually, well, not exactly a write-up. I have presented it at several conferences, including actually the GLS conference a couple of years ago. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation specifically about the Wellness Challenge, and I have some information online. So anybody is welcome to email me, and I can send you some links and further information about that.
In fact, Jessica, if you wanted to email it to me, Bonnie, I can send it out to the group with the meeting notes.
Sure, that would be great.
Great, thanks. Another question we've had is, I wondered how you deal with the issue of student turnover. You know, we all have had the experience of working with superstar students who do so much, and then they graduate, those jerks.
I know.
I'm kidding.
So sad, isn't it?
Yeah, and then sometimes because you don't have that vibrant student leader, your programs aren't as active. So how have you dealt with that issue?
So that's a great question, and I actually learned a little bit the hard way how to deal with that issue, because I did have a few superstar students. So after the first year on the grant, I hired a very small student staff that we call the wellness team, and it's grown to about 8 students. But last spring, 4 of those students all graduated in 1 year, and so that was a lot of turnover, and we hired new students, but it's taken much more coaching to get them as actively involved and as familiar with what we're doing and how the campus works. And so one of the things I've done is to make sure that when I'm working with students, at least in areas that I have control over, such as my student staff, to just stagger their years so that maybe there's 2 people graduating at a time and not a significant chunk. But it is, it is a challenge, and I think part of it is getting people involved as early as possible, so as soon as they're arriving on campus, so that you have them at least for a length of time, and that when people graduate, hopefully you've been fostering new student leaders along the way, so you're not left starting over from scratch.
Yeah, that's such an important point about the importance of fostering the leadership in the students, and it's useful for the students as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another question we had is, so you talked about sharing data with the dean. I was wondering if you could tell us, what kind of data that was that you shared to help make your case.
So we definitely, I presented much more extensively the Wellness Challenge data to the department at the Student Affairs Department meeting. So we shared that data. I did share some of our Student Support Network training information as well. And then we also use an evidence-based intervention called the Belonging Intervention. So just sharing really information around research-based strategies and why we're selecting particular interventions, so that her expertise is not mental health or suicide prevention, and so really sharing as much information as possible to show her that we're thinking about this in a strategic way.
Great point. Thank you, Jessica. So it looks like that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Jessica, for presenting today, and her contact information is up there, and she would be happy to get any emails or calls from you, so feel free. So thanks again, Jessica.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So now I'm going to turn it over to Irene, who's going to talk about next steps.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bonnie. I know we went over a lot today in terms of building momentum and fostering leadership, so I just wanted to take this time to review some next steps. And at this time, I'm going to ask the operator, Candy, to open up all the lines, so just be mindful, and we will be engaging in discussion. So Candy, just let us know when the lines are all open.
Thank you. The lines are now open.
Okay, thank you so much. So the first question I had for the group was, what steps can you take or have taken to build momentum or foster leadership? I know a lot of you already started building momentum or fostering leadership, so feel free to share what you may be doing or steps that you've already taken. The lines are all open, so just feel free to share verbally or chat in as you feel comfortable. Okay, so I'm just gonna start calling on people at this time. It's my first time calling on people, so I'm a bit nervous, but Lisa, I know that you've been sharing some insights, so could you share just what steps you have taken or have taken to build momentum or foster leadership?
We're looking at our programming efforts for fall semester, so that has enabled me to meet with some of my collaborators and revisit where we are with our relationships and where we want to go. And then I recently had a conversation with our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs conceptualizing what we want to do in terms of sustaining the efforts for the grant after the grant ends. So I feel like we're making some headway, and certainly after we get through finals, being able to revisit our efforts and use the summertime to refocus will be helpful, because we're getting ready to go into our really solidly into our second year of the grant.
Wow, Lisa, it sounds like you will be having a busy summertime, and I really like the point you made about strategic planning that you'll be going over with some of your stakeholders, and that's what we've been talking about a lot, so that will definitely be helpful in terms of your sustainability efforts. So did anyone... Okay, Diana just shared that she edited yearly counseling center satisfaction survey to include academic or retention piece. Definitely, I feel like that's a really great point that Diana just made. If you already have existing surveys, you can definitely take a look at those surveys and see what items need to be included, or if there are any specific data points you're looking for, you can definitely try to leverage existing surveys and edit it as needed.
Diana, this is Bonnie. I'm wondering, so what exact questions did you add to the survey?
Hi, yeah. So far we just added one question. This is kind of a trial basis as our students are about to finish the semester and we'll be taking that survey. So we already had a question on there that said something to the effect of if I had not attended counseling, or no, if I had it by attending counseling, I know that I'm going to be able to be more successful at our university. So we added in a question after that one that specifically talked about academics, saying if I had not attended counseling, I would have had difficulty thriving academically at the university.
Ooh, that's a good question. I like that. That's going to give you some great stuff to show to the administration.
Yeah, so we're hoping it'll kind of spur on maybe possibilities of even further research, but just kind of using this kind of as a pilot to see what data we get back.
Absolutely. We'll be interested in hearing what kind of data you get back and any insights you get from that, adding that question as well. Did anyone else have any other next steps or what you can share with your stakeholders to inspire them? If you have any specific data or stories that you'll be sharing, feel free to speak up or chat in at this time.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, this is Cynthia Bryant from Tennessee Technological University, and as we were just going through, this had really nothing to do with the webinar, but I had an idea. I've had trouble making any headway with our religious organizations or faith-based organizations, and just this week they've announced that they're having a religious fair in August, so I was thinking I could just go out when they have that fair and just go around and actually meet some of the people. And then also, an interesting partnership that we've developed is with our STEM Center. It's the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Center, and with the solar eclipse coming through in August, we are in the viewing range of that. And so as part of the grant, we're providing viewing glasses and putting the grant logo information on the glasses. But that's one-time opportunity, but other universities, if they're in that viewing pathway, could find an interest in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Cynthia. It sounds like a great way to engage new, or sometimes it just takes that in-person interactions to engage partners. So I hope that the summertime when you actually go to the religious fair or the viewing glass, it'll be a great time for you to connect with them. And a lot of times we did hear that just meeting personally would help foster that partnership. So thank you so much for sharing. So did anyone have any last thoughts or comments before we go into wrapping up? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Bonnie.
Well, thanks everyone for that. And operator, you can remute the phone lines. So for homework, our next session is securing resources and funding, and we know that's a very important topic for you. The majority of you wrote that this was important in your SurveyMonkey responses. So for homework, we're asking that first, you look over your answers from the worksheet you filled out for session 1, prioritizing your work. So that was the pre-homework you had. And then fill in the worksheet Sustainability Action Plan. And that worksheet, Irene and I will email it out to you, and it's on our website, and you can see the address right there. And we thought this would be a great worksheet to help you write down your plans for sustainability based on these discussions and kind of, compile everything we've thought about together into one place. And, while filling out the worksheet, think about what data you have to help you make these decisions on what can and cannot be sustained. As well, again, here's the website for sustainability, and that's where the slides and homework are located, and the meeting notes and presentations are on that website as well. Another reminder to please email us your success stories for sustainability and send it to Irene or myself by May 12th. And also, we encourage you to keep in touch between meetings. Email addresses are on the Sustainability Series Participants Excel spreadsheet that we send out with every email, so please feel free to reach out to each other. And are there any questions about any of this? Please chat in. And while you may or may not be chatting in, here's everyone's contact information. Please do reach out to us if you have any questions at all. I'm not seeing any questions, so I am going to end the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day, and talk to you next month on May 22nd on securing resources and funding. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for your participation. That does conclude today's conference. You may disconnect at this time.